The NgRx Signal Store is a state management library introduced as a part of the NgRx ecosystem for handling application state in Angular. It leverages reactive programming principles by using signals, which were introduced in Angular following the concept of fine-grained reactivity. NgRx Signal Store is an experimental package within the NgRx ecosystem that provides a way to manage application state in Angular applications using fine-grained reactivity. It extends the concepts of Angular signals for application state management, allowing developers to write simpler, signal-based components without the need for boilerplate heavy concepts like reducers, actions, and effects. Without further ado, let's get into it right now and write the real life application example based on Open Library API. So let's go into it right now. Because people learning the best from the real life example, today let's gonna build application that will display list of books and based on the query, and the query will be sent to Open Library API. Let's begin with the project overview. So by standard we have an app component. This is our main entry point to our application, and here we have the router outlet that will render our components basically. And our router is configured over here. We have only one route, which is a books, and will render books component. Here we have the main app configuration. So here we provide HTTP client makes available to send request, HTTP request to API. In our case is Open Library. Here we provide our router and our zone change detection. So this project is separated into components folder, which contain our main component that will display the list of books, data access folder, which is our store. Another folder is the shared folder with interfaces like book interface, filter interface for different queries. And the last one is the services that will make all the requests to API. Before we will deep dive into the clue of this tutorial, which is NgRx Signal Store, let me show you how to make HTTP requests to our Open Library API. Let's begin with defining URL that we will send GET request to. So for this purpose, we need a list of Open Library, which is our main URL. Here is how we build query params, and here is the URL that we'll use to get covers of our books. Another thing that we need is our HTTP client that we will be able to make all those GET requests. So in this case, instead of using constructor and dependency injection as regular, now we can use this special inject method and just pass the class that we need to get. So next, what we have to define is our public class, and this class takes title, offset, and limit of the results that we want to get and returning the observable. So here, based on the injected HTTP client, we can make a GET request, and we are building basically our query params by injecting here title, offset, and limit. Here in this pipe and map function, we will map the results returning from the API. I can tell you from the structure, basically this num font is the maximum results that we obtain from the API, and the books will be the list of the books mapped to our special interface that I prepare over here, that consists of title, list of authors, link to the website with all the details, the link to the cover of the book, year of the publish of this book. So let's move on further. Now let's talk about how to define NgRx Signal Store. So let's begin with the type of the state that we want to have in our initial state. To define this, we need a list of books of the interface that we defined previously, the flag if it's loading or not loading from the API, number of found books, and the filter. And this filter consists of like title, order, ascending, descending, page, offset, and limit. So going back to our store, first we have to define our initial state. And this state every property here, key, will be wrapped by signal. So nevertheless, here we define basically the empty array and false, all the initial data that we need, some random data. Another thing is our signal store, and to define signal store we're using this function, and this function required you to inject the initial state. So to do this you use the with state function, and in this case you can create another manipulation with all the signals that you have defined over here with computed functions. So to do that you have to define with computed all those methods over here. So for example, if you want to get all the books you receive from the API, you can just use the computed function and using the signal and getting the length of the array basically. Another, if you want to get all the pages were returned based on the query that you prepared previously, you're just getting all the found books and divided it by the limits of the filter. So in this case I define there will be 20 books per page. So if you define it, then you can see how many pages you will get in total. So another thing to define is our methods to basically manipulate our state. So here from this method you can get access to the store, and here we can inject our service, open library. That's such a new for now. So within this method we can define our API endpoints and function that we'll be invoking if we want to obtain more data. So for this purpose we'll define the public method load by title, and we reuse the factory function that is a bridge between RxJS that is using API of RxJS and combining the NgRx libraries. We want to get title, offset and limit to invoke our service. So here we're passing the RxJS pipe function, and we are using the bounce time because we don't want user to make so many requests in one time. Another function is to distinct if some changes have occurred or not, and if not, then we are not gonna make a request. And in the tab function we'll basically change the state to loading, and switch map let us create a HTTP request, and every time that this function is invoked it will cancel the previous request and make another one. So here we are using our service that we injected before with this public function. Here in the pipe we can cover all the cases by tap response, which is NgRx operator, and with this operator we can cover the next in case of successful request, parsing all the data received from API to our state books, the number of the found books. Here we cover the error. In this case we just making the console error, and the finalize just to change the state, no longer loading. Additionally to our loading function we want helper functions to change separately parameters of our store. So the first helper function is when user type the new title in our input. In this case we're taking new title, we are updating our store, and we have to remember to reset page and offset, and once again invoke our loading function. Another is when user changing the page. In this case we are taking the number of the page. We have to remember to obtain offset, we have to multiply the limit that we set before with the current page and update the store, and once again invoke our API. Another helper function is to change the order from ascending to descending and vice versa. Let's move on. Now let me show you how to integrate store with our component. So first of all we have to provide the store for this component. In this case it's a single standalone component. So you have to provide it here in this component annotation. Another thing to do, you have to inject the store, and this is the same method that we used before to inject service. Let's create another private fields to get separate signals of the parameters from the store. So here we have the lists of the books, of the number of the books, all the filters of the books that we found or were found by API, the current pages, and the state if it's loading or not. So another thing, we need to get some reactive form, and in this case you're gonna create the title the sort and the page that can be changed manually, basically, by a button. Another thing on the NgInit lifecycle, first we are making our initial request to get some data. In this case it's about Harry Potter title, and here we are listening for changes on the title control and the page control. Now I want to show you briefly how I create the HTML template. So first of all, you have to create the main div that will be a wrapper of everything that we have on our page, and in this case will be the main page class that will be styling everything and setting up all the elements. So here you are defining the form group. So based on this, you can create the title basically and our input. So here we can use form control, and form control, because it's nested inside form group, it will be discovered and properly set up. So we have just normal break is the next button, previous button, and next button. Maybe they're not styled perfectly, but we can get there soon. Another thing are all the informations about list of the pages, current filters, how many books were found, and the current page you are on. You need to show the user if it's loading or not. For this purpose, first we have a loader spinner, and once loading is done, then we are defining the table that contains cover, title, author, and the published year. And here we are using the for loop and looping through all the books and tracking by a cover. And here, if the cover were found, ng optimize image, ng source. And in this case, we have fixed setup of the width and height and the placeholder. And by defining this placeholder, when the image is loading, instead of showing nothing, now we are displaying our defined GIF over here. And here we are disabling the initial blur of it. And in case if we didn't find it, then we just displaying this information. And here is the row of like title, author, publisher, and so on. So that's the structure of HTML. Now to sum up everything, let me show you how this page looks like, and let's run our server. So this will take a couple of seconds. That's how nice Vite is. And it's up and running. Let's open the browser. And as you can see, that was our initial spinner. And here is the placeholder. And some images, as you can see, are still loading, some were not found. And if the user will change the page, here automatically Signal will update the number. And here some images are still loading, but all the data is available. Okay, now let's change the title. And automatically all their signals were invoked. And now we are waiting to get this image. So nevertheless, you can see everything is working fine as expected. And that will be all in this episode. Subscribe for more and see you in the next one.